Well, hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone who's here virtually and those of you who may be joining us later on some form of replay. I just shared with our audience that we're going to record parts of the conversation, but not all of them because we do want this to be a brave space, right, Emlyn, for conversations around allyship. Again, good evening. I am Sharonda Robinson and I am the CEO of Adisa Communications. It is so exciting for me to be with you tonight to host this conversation with some amazing people in our community who have a lot to share with us, as well as with you that we all have a lot to learn from. Um, we have not brought our playbook to life, and this is our first attempt at bringing a playbook for Black Austin activism to life. So you're in for a treat in tonight's conversation, and we really do want you to just relax. We know that there's storms happening. I've got people on hotspots without power that are dedicated, so dedicated to being here. But we really do want to enjoy our time together, and we wish that we could be with you in person. And as soon as we possibly can, we will be together in person. Um, so I wanted to first thank the people who are behind the scenes. Quite literally, Lakeisha was having an issue with her video and couldn't get it to show. So she'll be like what they call in theater, the voice of God tonight, just coming across the airwaves, helping us with this evening's meeting. But I wanted to express my appreciation to Lakeisha Moore. She is the director of the Adisa Foundation and a communications director at Adisa Communications. And she really is the person who centers this work for the foundation and for our company. And so round of applause to Lakeisha Moore and her brilliance in helping us put tonight's event together and future events. We're so happy that you're on the team and that you are able to do such great work for the company and for our community. I also want to thank the Adisa Communications team. We call ourselves Team Adisa. That are here. We've gone international with Team Adisa. We've got one of our team members who's joining us from Barcelona, Spain, on her way to Nice. I'm telling all your business, Carmela, because I'm a little jelly that I'm not with you, but we've got a couple of team members who are on tonight. And so Team Adisa is a team of geniuses who do amazing work in this community and across the world to support conversations around equity, around peace, around justice, around food, and around how we make decisions together as a community. So, welcome to my team. And again, welcome to each one of you who is joining with us this evening. So, tonight's discussion, as I mentioned, will center around allyship and what it means to representatives from what is, I guess, the new term now. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, what is that? BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, People of Color, and LGBTQIAA communities, and how we can serve as a stronger ally. And so we'll have an opportunity not only to listen and to learn from each other, but to practice healthy interactions with members of various communities in real time. You know, as a Black woman, it's really important to me that we expand our understanding of what it means to be an ally, and that we can be an ally to other communities as a Black community, and build those bonds and those strong relationships. So I am personally excited about tonight's conversation because I want to learn how to be better at being an ally to other communities across the city, this state, and this world. So before we get started, I want to provide a brief overview of what to expect. We really do hope that you feel a warm welcome tonight. And in just a moment, I'll introduce our amazing panelists. After that, we'll have an icebreaker activity, and that's when things get good. So after our icebreaker, we'll have a panel discussion, and it'll be centered around the conversation of allyship. In these virtual settings, we like to make sure that we're engaging as much as possible. So we're going to put you into a small breakout, and you're going to have an opportunity to have a private conversation about the topic. And then we ask that as we go on tonight, it's really informal as we're in the panel. If you have questions, just use the reactions button on your Zoom to raise your hand or wave, and I'll try to make sure that I get you on to ask your question or to make your comment. So I want to tell you a little bit about Adisa Communications because some of you are new to our community here online. And so I established Adisa Communications 26 years ago. I was 3 years old. And we focus on public sector and nonprofit entities. And I'll just give you a little bit of insight. A couple of weeks ago, we pulled the team together because one of the things that the pandemic has done, I think for all of us, but and me as a business owner, is make me sit down, slow down a little bit, and think about what is the new direction for the organization and what's coming up, what's surfacing for us. We've had a great strategic planning session, and we have identified several verticals that we're focused on. Some of them we're already in right now, but we're adding to. And so one of the verticals that I get to lead is our new social justice vertical. And so this work really falls into that social justice vertical that we've established. And we've been doing this work for a long time. It's just now we're getting really clear about what that looks like to be able to serve really significant and important causes. Another vertical that I'm super excited about that we're taking on is the food industry. And so again, we've been doing this work kind of sporadically, and now we're really laser focused on how we serve the food industry. So restaurants, wholesalers, people who have products development, we want your business, we want to do work with you. And then, you know, I mentioned that I started the company 26 years ago. And when I started the company 26 years ago, we were in the middle of a tech boom. And we called it, for those of you who will remember, we called it the .com era. And I was a little younger than I am now. And the tech industry was not as welcoming to someone who looked like me, who had my background at that particular point in time. And so I kind of gave up on it. And the team has reignited the spark for us to do work within that industry. And so I'm super excited about the communications and community relations strategy and execution that we can do in the tech space. And so that's the latest update from Adisa Communications related to the work that we do. We're a full service firm. And again, we're centering ourselves around these verticals in the years to come. And I already shared with you that our team is made up of geniuses. They are really world-class professionals who serve from the heart and also have great minds to help you solve your biggest business problems. So just wanted to give you a little overview about Adisa. And Adisa is actually a person. It's my oldest son, and I named the company after him. And his name means one who makes himself clear. So all of our work at Adisa Communications is about creating clarity for our clients. So thank you for allowing me that opportunity to do that little infomercial. And then I want to now turn our attention to our panelists this evening. And I'm super excited to be hosting tonight's conversation. Our after hours events are a way for us to give to our community, and it comes from one of our core values. We have the 4 C's, and one of the C's is caring. And the question arose for us as a team, how can we serve our clients and community in ways other than consulting? Because we really do get to work with some really cool people on some really cool projects and have some really cool conversations. And we wanted to be able to offer that to our community. And so our after hours series was birthed. This is season 3 of our after hours series. And we introduce you to coaches and authors and leaders to have intimate conversations about thought-provoking and leading edge topics. And so our panelists tonight are really going to help us to dive deep into this idea of activism and allyship. And so I really want you to help me give a warm welcome to Emlyn Lee with Brave Communities. She founded this Austin based nonprofit in 2016, and the mission is to cultivate brave spaces for people to come together to discover their similarities, share their differences, and co create connection. She Brave organizes and facilitates community conversations, youth empowerment, community service efforts with a focus on social and racial justice. She designs and facilitates youth leadership and social entrepreneurship programs for organizations and agencies, including US embassies in the Middle East and the US State Department. So it's going to be interesting to hear her view, her view on global allyship. I can't wait to hear that from you. And Emlyn is passionate about empowering and amplifying the voices of marginalized people. And her life's mission is to uplift people to discover their similarities and share their differences with love, compassion, and empathy. So we'll hear from Emlyn in a few moments. After we do our icebreaker, our panel will start. And then I also want to introduce to you Jonathan Barona with the Austin Community Foundation. He's a career nonprofit professional and community impact advocate. In his current role as a donor relations officer with the Austin Community Foundation, he helps community members and fund holders determine the best way for them to engage in philanthropy. He is the co-founder of the HSI Battle of Brains and Fruitful Commons, and he serves as a board member for the Festival Beach Food Forest, Austin Youth River Watch, Earth Day Austin, and represents District 3 on the City of Austin Zero Waste Advisory Commission. So we want to welcome Jonathan Barona with Austin Community Foundation to tonight's discussion. And our final panelist this evening is KB Brookins. And KB is from Stop 6, Fort Worth, Texas. KB, I have to say, I appreciate you putting that in your bio, because when I'm from Houston, but I say Third Ward, Houston, Texas, and we understand that, right? They are a queer, non-binary poet, educator, organizer, and lover of most plants and people. They want to be your friend as well as your reminder to think in abundance. They published in the Cincinnati, have works published in the Cincinnati Review, the Offing, Emlyn, and other equally pretty places. Their clap book, How to Identify Yourself with a Womb, won the 2021 Seguro Poetry Prize. Congratulations to you for that, KB. And it was written with support from workshops with Lambda Literally and Surreal Life, The Watering Hole, the Hearst Wright Foundation, the Speakeasy Project, and Winter Tangerine. They are currently a PEN America Emerging Writers Fellow and an African American Leadership Institute Austin Fellow. And so when not on stage, they serve as the founding executive director of Interfaces, co-founder and board member of Embrace Austin, and that's where we met, KB, and a community advisory board member for Texas Health Action. Welcome, KB Brookins, to tonight's conversation. So again, I told you the truth. We have amazing panelists that we're going to hear from about a variety of perspectives related to allyship. And so please open your hearts and your minds and get your questions ready. We're going to be starting our panel discussion after tonight's icebreaker. And in tonight's icebreaker, we're going to ask you to answer the question in small groups. What does being an ally mean to you? And so how this works is you take a few moments to think about what your response is, and then we're going to zip you into a small group, maybe do 3 groups tonight, and then, or 4 groups tonight, and then you'll have an opportunity to answer the question in your group. You know, pick a person to go first. What does being an ally mean to you? And then we'll spend a few moments in our breakouts, because normally if we were in person, we would like find people to talk to and chat with our little glass of wine and plate of cheese and snacks. So hopefully you've got yours ready. But we're gonna zip you into the breakouts, and then you'll spend a few moments there just answering that question, and then we'll come back together as a group. All right, and then we'll start with our panel discussion. Okay. Not sure who's doing the zipping, but let's zip away. There's always suspense when we're doing zipping because we never know exactly when it's going to happen.
There's just a little technological fun happening on my end, but we are almost there.
Okay, that is the voice of God. You hear Lakeisha Moore. And yes, God is a woman.
Yes. All right. We are just about ready. And we'll have 4 to 5 participants per room, 3 rooms, and we are discussing what allyship means to us.
All right.
Have fun. Go to the break.
Hi, Lakeisha.
Hello. I'm like, where am I? So I'm joining by phone and by my computer.
Okay.
I think that, okay, by phone, I'm in KB's breakout room. Emlyn, I'd like to put you in a room with other people, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
I think it tried to do it automatically, but for whatever reason, that didn't happen. So,
Sure.
let's move you to, oh, let's see. Okay, so you should see a join or accept.
I think I'm still in a room by myself.
Okay. Let's try that one more time. For whatever reason, Emlyn, it keeps kicking you back. Are you hitting accept?
No, it's not even giving me that option. Like it starts putting me to another room and then puts me to the main room. And then it suddenly, I'm not pushing anything.
Oh, that's so bizarre.
I think if you go to breakout rooms and then you can you can do a sign to.
Yeah, I've got you assigned to room 3, but it says not joined, which means there must be a prompt on your end that we're missing. Yep, I can see where you join, and then it says that you leave.
It keeps saying it's joining room 2. I think I'm in room. It keeps like telling me to join room 2, but I'm not pushing anything. And then it mutes me.
Okay. If you still see an option to join, go ahead, and you don't. Okay. All right. I wouldn't worry about it. Take a break.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But I want to thank you so much for just your willingness to participate tonight. We're a small firm, so we're always moving 100 miles per hour. And I feel like, you know, in retrospect, I was like, I should have communicated more. I should have met with them.
No, there are no should-haves. It is what it is. No worries.
I'm like, at least I did well getting a calendar notice on people's calendar with information in it. But, you know, rest assured, I don't want, you know, that's, we really are, you know, on top.
No, of course.
I want you to.
There's no judgment on technical issues of the Zoom world, so do not worry.
Great. Oh gosh, I have no idea what. So let's see. I want to say.
Oh, it actually does. Now I can see you have been assigned to breakout room 3. I can do that now. I didn't get that warning, but I just.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, try to go ahead and join and sneak in. See what they're talking about.
Thanks, Adisa.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right, so it looks like folks are coming back from their icebreakers. Does anyone want to share what they talked about? If you learned anything about the question, what does it mean to be an ally from your own perspective?
You're gonna have to start calling on us. Sure.
I think so. I think so. All right, Shane, what you got? I'm picking on you because I missed seeing you.
You're not picking on me because I'm white. Come on.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, I think kind of the themes that came out maybe of our space was that it is action oriented, right? It is what we do, not who we are. Or if it is who we are, it's because of what we do. And for me, it also is about like getting outside of my comfort zone, right? And putting myself in the same level of risk as the community I'm an ally with, right? And I'm a big believer that we're allies with people and not necessarily for, which feels patronizing to me.
That was so rich and so good. Thank you. And I know that you know, you are part of this work, you know, as part of your work in the world and your creative expression in the world. And that was really powerful. Like, we're not doing allyship for someone, we're doing allyship with community, with another person. That's very rich. Thank you, Shane, for sharing that. Anyone else? Anything that sparked for you during the icebreaker? Well, I will just say that one of the impetus behind the topic for the playbook, we do them every quarter, every season, and you know, it occurred to us as we were entering into the 1-year anniversary of George Floyd's murder that you know, and we all have experienced the global uprising around social justice and the renewed calls for Black Lives Matter, that it is really important for us to understand in this new era of social activism, the collective and the collaboration and the coalition building, and how we do that as Black people, as a Black community, and to make sure that we're better equipped to do that work together. And so that was the foundation for the conversation around starting with, what does allyship mean? And how do we as a Black community serve as allies with others, not for, right? Shane, not for, but with others. And so, this conversation is really important for us because we don't often have these conversations in the Black community around allyship, and being an ally with another group of people. So I'm super excited from that perspective as well. And so with that, we will just get started with our panel discussion. Now, I know that you all are going to have questions, and so I invite you to, as we go through the discussion this evening, that you put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that, as well as, again, just wave your hand, raise your hand, take yourself off mute. We can be really relaxed this evening, because we do want this to be a dialogue and a conversation. So just imagine yourself in person, sitting in the room, having that conversation, and we will go ahead and get our panelists up here and ready to go with us. We've got Emlyn Lee with Brave Communities, and we have KB, the poet, and Jonathan Barona. And I'm super honored and grateful that you all chose to be here tonight. So my first question for you is, why did you say yes to this invitation? Like, why are you here tonight? And that's for everyone. So who wants to go first?
I could probably go break the ice. So yeah, I mean, like, Adisa has always been really awesome, specifically Sharonda, to me, and I love the work that y'all are doing, because I don't see a lot of, kind of like businesses, especially businesses that are all over like y'all, kind of like take an interest in like creating conversations around like these kinds of topics and around like social justice. Also, I think allyship is a conversation that needs to keep happening, that needs constant intervention, that needs constant introspection from people that call themselves allies. So yeah, just throwing my ideas, my musings in the ring tonight is mostly why I'm here.
Thank you, KB. Who's next, Jonathan or Emlyn?
I'll go. So for me, to tag on to and echo what KB was saying, allyship is so necessary, and you can never have enough conversations about this. Also, I think I was sitting near a table at the Austin's Women's event, and the Adisa's table was the funnest and best table. I didn't even know you all were, I was just like, these women are awesome. I call these gadink moments. I think maybe a week or two later or something, I got this email and I was like, what? Yeah, toy. And then seeing Jonathan's name, who's a great friend, co-conspirator, I was like, I'm on it. But again, to allyship and everything that's going on with Black Lives Matter, with the Asian hate that's been rising due to COVID. It's just so much that we are all behind screens still, like how, if we're not able to interact in person, the best way to do it is continue the conversation. And so I appreciate this opportunity, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Emlyn. Yeah, we were kind of lit, That was fun. It was, so just to give the audience a little bit of insight, and the Austin Women's Award was like the first in-person event that I have done since COVID. And so all that pent up energy and all that pent up like party excitement was that's what you saw at the table that night. We were just like, yeah, we're out there, people, we can party. Thank you. Jonathan,
That's great.
why did you say yes to tonight?
Yeah, no, thank you. I think, you know, the world was telling me that we had to come together, Sharonda, between the work at ACF and then Julie reaching out and just like lots of different connections through kind of CRT, and like your name was popping up in lots of places. Adisa Communications was popping up in lots of places. So when I got the email to kind of contribute to the playbook, I was honored and excited about that. I also think kind of separately in my own life, I've been thinking a lot about allyship. You know, I think over the past year, you mentioned George Floyd, but, you know, there's a conversation around how do Black and brown people work together? How do all people of color work together around these issues that are coming to the forefront over the past year? And then I've had kind of internal thoughts around like race and Latinidad. How do those come together? What does that mean in the context of the US? So I think the conversation was timely for where my mind was at the moment. So thank you for the invite. And then obviously I'll take any chance I get to hang out with Emlyn because it's my homie. So.
Absolutely. No, thank you all so much. I think that one of the things that we want to do is ground this conversation because we see you all as people who can help us understand this more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though we've answered the question for ourselves in our breakouts, would really love to hear from you. What is your definition of an ally? So who wants to start?
I can go since I went last time. So I, you know, in our little breakout group, one thing that came up was the fact that kind of the definition of allyship for each of us has evolved over time. And so I would kind of take that with my answer, is that it's an evolving kind of concept in my mind. I think when I think about allyship, there's an intentionality of kind of understanding and support that's really important, right? So it's not just, hell yeah, you know, I want everyone to be happy and have equity, but there's like this intentionality and research and kind of understanding that has to be present in order to be an ally. And then I think there's a piece that goes into, that's the action piece, but that has evolved into kind of this co-conspirator or accomplice language, which I'm actually a huge fan of because like there's putting a sign in your yard is not necessarily allyship. There has to be more to it. So that's my kind of non-definitive definition.
Yeah, I think all definitions are great. And so let's talk about that as in terms of action. I do want to expand on that a little bit, but KB, what's your definition of being an ally?
Yeah, so this is near and dear to me, so I'm gonna have a long-winded answer. I promise I'll cut myself off at like 3 minutes. So I think an ally is a person that adopts like a specific set of practices, like one of them being speak up, stand up. So when you see, hear, experience something, when cameras aren't present, when there aren't, you know, folks of that community in the room, when the community you're being an ally to has no gold star to give you, right? You're still speaking up. You're still standing up. You're being that barrier, you know, between cops at protests. That's not the only way, though, to speak up and stand up. It's like so many rooms that I don't have access to just because I'm Black. And not only Black, I'm also queer. And not only Black and queer, but I'm also trans. And all of those things at the same time, like puts barriers up, right? For me being in specific kind of social situations. And I find that allies speak up and stand up, right? And they don't adopt allyship with some kind of expectation that they'll get something, right? It's like we all have a shared understanding of why this is morally like just, why this morally needs to happen. I think allies also adopt solidarity, not charity. So it's too many people, right, that call themselves allies that say, I just want to help people, right? And while that's good intentioned, you must see us as equal. Like the communities that you're advocating for, you must see them as equal to you. Otherwise, that's going to just create so many other kinds of issues, right? And there's a lot of like give voice to the voiceless kinds of things that come from folks. They usually start with the I just want to help people. And I don't believe anybody is voiceless. I believe sometimes you're just not listening, right? Or sometimes what you're doing is not making space for me to sit right next to you in those rooms with those CEOs, in those rooms with those change makers that you may have access to that I don't have access to. But the goal is not to be translating, you know, what I'm saying to them. The goal is for both of us to be in the room, right? So if that's not happening, then I don't know if I can call it allyship, right? And then another one is like allies, I think, lead with vulnerability. Like if you, if you don't, I think if you don't approach this work with a level of, I have a capacity to mess up, I have the capacity to do harm, I have the capacity to, you know, potentially, you know, really mess this thing up, right? But I'm ready to be accountable. I'm ready to like say what feels like a pressure point for me. I'm ready to say, I don't know this thing, right? Because like no one is coming into allyship knowing every single thing. You couldn't, right? Especially if you're not part of that community, right? So leading with vulnerability, and then also educating yourself, right? And specifically, I say yourself because I don't know that I need to be a part of that process, right? If you're trying to be like allied to Black communities and you're not Black, I don't know that I need to be educating you, especially when like the internet is as expansive as it is, right? Like I feel like I can Google anything, right? And find out what the conversation is and what I can do. Like there have been so many movements that I haven't been a part of because I don't share identities with that specific community that I've just looked up, right? There are Instagram accounts, all that stuff, right? And you can't see our communities as like endless wells that you can drink from, right? I don't need to be in a drought. I need water too, right? So do your work as an ally. And then I think the last thing for me is apologizing, not making excuses in that apology, and then also doing better in the present, right? So I hear a lot, right? Like, I'll do better in the future. And it's like, or you can not misgender me again while we're on this call, right? That is a present thing that you can do, right? Or it's like, okay, you notice that something you did was like not kosher, right? In that apology, I don't know that I need to hear, or I shouldn't hear, I should say, like, my intention was not that, right? Like, regardless of intention, this is the impact. So let's focus on that and let's like just agree to do better. Like, just the other day, right? I was like posting something online. I forgot to put an image description, and one of my like friends that like needs those image descriptions, person with disabilities, like was like, "Hey, here's an image description for this thing," and I'm like, "I'm so sorry I made you do that labor. I'm gonna do better," right? So now I'm trying to like hopefully work on retroactively just putting image descriptions on all of my images, right? It's just like no making excuses, because I could say my intention wasn't to be ableist, but what is that gonna do really, right? So, yeah.
So good. Thank you, KB. I think that you came with receipts in terms of your checklist, and they put it in the chat. So does everybody have that? There is, oh, actually, yeah, it's in the chat. So thank you for that beautiful answer. Emlyn, what does it mean to be an ally?
Yeah, that was so great, KB. You know, we actually are right now are going through a summer workshop with teen girls. They're called the Brave Makers. And so we actually just talked about this past Thursday about allyship. And we were talking about microaggressions and biases and prejudice. And then how do you kind of what KB was talking about, speaking up and standing up. You know, so there's a part of like calling out and calling in, you know, of being able to recognize when people and actually like recognize yourself. I think we were talking about this in our breakout groups of recognizing and understanding our own privileges, because we all have different privileges, whether it's you know, your race, your gender, your faith group, your ableism, your sexual orientation. There's some sort of privilege that you have compared to another person. And so I think, you know, recognizing and understanding your privilege and how you're able to give space and give a seat at the table to those that have been marginalized. And so how do you work alongside and with, like what Shane was saying, is like, how do you work with those that, you know, have been historically and traditionally and presently oppressed? And so that, you know, then comes up with the kind of being an upstander. I know right now kind of being a bystander has been a very, you know, active way, but it's like, how do we actually be an upstander, and kind of using tagging on with what KB was saying, is like speaking up or calling out, calling in on any microaggressions that we actually like hear. And then kind of like, you know, listening and doing your homework. There is so much that's out there, right? And so how can we be intentional of listening and hearing the stories and the voices of people that we of experiences that we don't have in our own circle, in our own bubble, in our own lifestyle, because we are not this race, we are not this gender, we are not this sexual orientation, we're not this faith group. And so not to be, you know, corny, but BRAVE is actually an acronym. And so it's really building relationships, awareness, voices, and engagement. And so we try to reiterate that with the girls, our BRAVE makers, that it's constantly like, you know, to be an ally, you have to be brave, you know, and that's like that relationship building that and providing that voice and being able to be engaged and really taking action.
I love where this conversation is headed because, you know, as a Black woman, I think sometimes I feel like I'm expected to know. Like I'm expected to understand someone else's experience. I'm expected to be down, you know, with the Latinos. I'm expected to be down with the queer community. You know, I'm expected to like have that experience and to know that like from the womb, to be woke. And the truth is that I've been socialized in a culture, a dominant culture, just like everyone else. And of course, there have been interventions, and I'm more likely to understand woke from the womb. Thank you, Ra. You know, there have been interventions, and I'm less likely to be unwoke because of my Blackness, but it's not a guarantee. And so how do people explore their biases? Because it's scary. Y'all are talking about being brave and being vulnerable and, you know, apologizing and not making excuses. And on a good day, you know, I don't know how good I am at that, right? So when I'm dealing with issues of race and identity, it feels really weird inside. So how do we approach this work? You know, give us some guidance around exploration of biases. I know KB, they just talked about, you know, educating yourself, but like, does that question make sense? Like, how do I start?
Right. And I can even say more there, like there are certainly communities that I'm not a part of that I had to learn about, you know, if I'm trying to be for me, like liberation means liberation for all people, right? So yeah, surely I have stuff that I need to learn even now, even today. I think that it helps to look at allyship as a process and not a destination. Like it's not like a place where you are going to get to a place and then your learning is gonna be over. Like even about my own community, because I am Black in a way that, you know, somebody else is not Black, right? And like that experience of Blackness is just as valid. So I think that the nature of humanity is that we're going to get in conflict, that we're going to like hurt each other, but that hurt doesn't have to escalate to harm if we like see allyship as a process. I also think very recently, especially, I've been thinking about like embodied allyship. And when I say like embodied, I mean like sure, on the surface, we can be this person that like has all of these, nuggets of information that people write down and whatever. But if someone calls me out right now and I immediately get defensive, I'm not embodying, right? I still have some stuff to work out internally, right? So I think that working on those knee-jerk reactions, because those knee-jerk reactions are still very much a part of us. Like when someone, does something and we immediately are angry, we immediately are hurt, we immediately are on the defense. Like I think, I don't know, it takes body work to do kind of like that embodied allyship. And it also takes like introspection, because like surely even 2 years ago, I feel like I didn't have all of the answers that I have now, and I still feel like I'm finding answers in ways. But in that process, I feel like, okay, when something like that would happen 2 years ago, I would get angry, and now I'm like, how do we fix it? Right. So like the embodiment is like kind of showing through in those specific instances. Now, like 100%, it's still stuff that like comes up and I get angry. Right. But like I'm working, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love what you said about, and I'm mispronouncing you. I apologize. I'm trying to work it out in my head, KB, around where I substitute, and I don't know. Like, is it, so this is like a real, this is happening live for me. Is it they all the time? Or so if I say you, is that okay or is that not okay? Based on your,
Totally okay.
okay.
So I think it helps to think about it as like, if, I actually feel like I learned this from Shane, LOL, or like someone that used like learned this from Shane and then told me. But it's like, if we were in a classroom right now and I left this like pen and you didn't know who I was, you didn't see my face at all, right? You would probably say, I 100% guarantee this. You would be like, somebody left their pen. I hope they come back and get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, like naturally, when we don't see somebody, we use they. And
Okay.
that's like what I mean when I say they. It's
Okay.
like, don't perceive my gender. I don't have one kind of thing, right?
Okay.
But yeah, they, them, theirs. I think it like also helps to like name a plant or name something in your house that so you can like practice it. Cause I also don't think it's like
That's so
always.
good.
Yeah.
Write that down. I mean, that is one of the things that I struggle with, is like like figuring out where I put the pronoun, because I'm conditioned, socialized, trained, learned, practice, experience as saying you, when I'm talking with someone. And so like to make that shift in my brain, and I also appreciate the journey, right?
Yeah.
That is not, it's like I don't have to get it right away. But I can practice. So I am going to name my plant. Thank you for that.
Yes. I mean, like 2 years ago when I started working at the Women's and LGBTQIA plus center that I worked at, it was a set of pronouns that I was really just fumbling, right? So I named a snake plant in my house like those pronouns.
Yeah,
And
that's
I was like,
what I'm gonna name. There's a snake plant in my.
yeah.
They got it. I'm practicing. All right.
Yeah, just practice it. Practice makes perfect,
Yeah, I love that. So how do we start, Jonathan? Like how do we examine our biases, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think kind of what I mentioned earlier, where it has to be a conscious process, right? So you have to be kind of willing to do the work. I think KB has really said a lot of very insightful things around, doing the work yourself, not expecting the community that you're trying to kind of work with or that you're engaging with to do the work for you. I also think, talking about vulnerability, you can't be you can't be all things to all people. So, choose your journey, choose your experience, and figure out kind of where do you want to plug in, what impact do you want to make in this world, what places are there for you to go. You don't have to kind of boil the ocean at one go, right? Like you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be at every protest. You don't have to be at every community meeting. That's how people burn out. That's how people get exhausted. That's how people end up kind of retreating from this work, right? So be at the places where you can kind of be there fully and engage in a very conscious way, right? Engage in a in an intentional way, engage in an informed way, right? I think it's okay to ask questions. I know this has come up a lot around, you can search Google, read history books, all of that, but once you start building relationships with people, you can ask questions, but just come in a very from a very open place, and pick your on-ramps, right? Like right now, just in the Latino community, we've got issues in the border, we got issues in my country, Colombia, we've got issues in Cuba. It doesn't help if you're going somewhere without understanding the nuances behind Cuba and the Miami Cubans, and then the Marielitos in the 80s, and how those are two different communities, and then the folks still on the island. If you come in ignorant, you're doing more harm, right? So you don't have to know everything. That would be my kind of advice. And I think, even someone in the Latino community, like when I grew up in South Florida on the East Coast, Colombian, when I'm in Miami, I'm Cuban. When I'm in Orlando, I'm Puerto Rican. When I'm and when I moved to Texas, like I had to learn how to engage with the Mexican community. It's just it wasn't something I knew, and I stumbled, and there were things where I'd be like, no, where are your people really from? And they're like, nah, homie, we were here, the border was here, it moved down here. We've always been from Texas. And you have to learn those things as you engage different populations or different issues. So that to me is how I approach a lot of the work, is doing some of my research, coming to it from a very honest and genuine place. And knowing there are things I don't know, knowing what I know, and kind of asking folks and doing research and doing that. So.
Well, thank you for that, Jonathan. And I want to ask Emlyn, I want to kind of segue to another question. And as I'm doing so, when you talk, Jonathan, about developing those relationships and asking people questions, I had really powerful experiences coming from Houston to Austin and attending the University of Texas. And, in Black culture, there is a lot of homophobia. And so what I learned from that culture was that homophobia was a sin, that it was unnatural, that, just all these things. And no one actually told me that, like specifically. Like, I don't remember like sitting down and reading a book and like getting the text and, answering the questions and getting the right answer. And I don't remember that class. But I just know that by the time I got to the University of Texas, that was my mindset. That's what I knew. And there was a Filipino gay man by the name of Peter Chua, who I developed a relationship with. We became really good friends. And he walked me out of that learning, And I asked him at 17 and 18 years old, like I'm sure they were the most inappropriate questions ever. But because we loved each other and we had a friendship, it was a safe space for me to be ignorant, and also a safe space for him to like pour life into me. And I'm so grateful for that. And so he helped translate my ignorance into understanding. And so sometimes I think that that's what we have to do for each other in this work, is that there are people who are willing, but don't have the understanding, haven't had the practice, are new to the journey, have from their own culture all of these biases and norms that are built into the culture. I mean, we can look at all of the cultures and see something, and it's like, okay. So Emlyn, I just wonder what is the role of a translator, right? And is that a thing in allyship? Because I know I find myself in meetings and conversations with people who this is like day one, brand new. It's like, no, you can't say colored anymore. Just like that's an over exaggeration, but do you find yourself in those spaces, and if so, how do you approach that?
That's a great question. as far as, well, I want to tag on with some of the conversations that was said earlier with the panelists, and even in this chat board. I think a great thing to take action with, whether that is like introspective and, you know, asking your friend and your ally and or the translator is really, and because we're in such an instant gratification world that we are in now, I think a big thing is just to pause and reflect, and you can ask yourself the question, like, what is what I'm about to say benefiting this conversation, right? And, you know, I think we're just so used to like instant, like notifications, apps, I don't know, when you go to the gym and you're working out and then all of a sudden you're like watching TV and there's a CNN ticker, there's so much going on and we're wanting instant information so fast that I think a lot of times we speak without thinking, you know, and I think a lot of times it'll benefit. I know it for sure benefits me, even in like any relationship. It could be with my spouse, it could be with my mom, it could be with my neighbor, and it could be with a stranger. And so, you know, you get so defensive, you know, or offensive, or, you know, as compassionate as possible. So I think if sometimes pausing and reflecting what, you know, and I think asking questions is great, you know, especially when you're having when you're someone saying something in a microaggressive way, you know, to respond back with a question. But I think a lot of times that's how you can respond, like that's how you can check in with yourself of what I am saying, you know, if that's going to benefit this conversation, this relationship, this, you know, I need to do better. Thankfully, I saw my husband was on, and I know he's at a work meeting. So I think when he realized that it was a breakout, this at least isn't, oh, it is recorded. I was gonna say, he's gonna be like, you said to pause and not speak straight from like whatever. But anyways, so I think, so tagging on with that, you know, because I heard like such great tips from the panelists and from the chat board. That's something that I feel like I need to do better, you know, is, you know, pause and reflect. And that's that whole journey. I mean, it's not just a one conversation or question. It's like unpacking and processing, unlearning all the stuff that we've learned, you know, through schools, or not, or what we haven't learned properly through schools, through media, through our everyday life. And so that I've never heard that, the translator, right? And so like that translator, I think, I mean, I mean, like, I can be my own translator, right? Because I really, and, you know, I want to have the allies, and that's what allyship is. Like, I want to have that good of a relationship with other people that I can feel uncomfortably comfortable to ask them, did I just F up? You know, like, am I, like what I am thinking, what I am saying, or, you know, is that something that is appropriate? And I think when you have that type of a friend, that type of a co-conspirator, co-agitator, whomever, that's an ally. And I think that's where, that's where I feel like that relationship is so helpful, and impactful in like your own relationship, and then really what's going to make an impact in our society.
Go ahead, Jonathan. Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to, I was just listening and, you know, just thinking about this conversation of like, I'm not Google for you, right? But the idea of having a translator, I think, is earned, right? Like, you have to build the relationship with someone in that community to where it's appropriate. If you went to your friend that you met at UT and said, hey, what is gay? What does that mean, right? Like, he wouldn't be your friend, right? You wouldn't have been able to develop that relationship to where he could kind of enlighten you on the community and the struggle and everything else that I'm sure you guys talked about. It's a very earned position. And I think the instant gratification that Emlyn was bringing up is how people want to take on this work sometimes. And they say, oh, I want to get into what the Black Lives Matter issue right now. So let me go find my Black friend or somebody that I know and go, hey, what's going on with this Black Lives Matter thing? What's it mean? And you haven't earned the ability to do that yet. So I don't know, that just really kind of stuck out to me because that relationship piece, I think,
Yeah,
needs to be drilled
I
in.
appreciate that. That's so powerful, that reflection and that relationship piece. We're getting some really good themes from tonight's conversation. And, I don't know if I was very well versed or positioned, but I was definitely curious and definitely knew that we could talk. We were student organizers, and so we had been, in the trenches dealing with racist acts on campus. And this was, I'm not going to say how long ago it was. This was a long time ago. And so that created that kind of connection. But I'm going to have to find Peter because he walked me through that. So this is an amazing conversation, and I would love for our guests who are joining us this evening to get in on the conversation, whether you want to put a comment or a question in the chat, or if you want to turn on your mic and your screen and ask yourself, because there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of insight, and just some good nuggets for us tonight. And so I know you all have questions as well. So I'm going to open up the floor and see if there's anyone who wants to ask a question or make a comment. Someone muted me. Maybe I muted myself. I don't see anyone's mics turning off. So we are prepared for this moment because we have a few more questions for you. I mentioned at the top of our conversation that we were going to do 2 breakouts. And so now's the time for the second one. And in the second breakout session, we're going to ask you, after hearing our panelists speak, what are the ways in which you can serve as a stronger ally? And then you'll have an opportunity to talk to the panelists. Will be in your group. So we'll do 2 groups, I think this time, Lakeisha, and then, get some more wisdom, some more nuggets, some more great insight information from our panelists this evening. So the question is, after hearing from our panelists, what are the ways in which you can serve as a stronger ally? And then panelists get to give you feedback. And then KB just put some more in the chat for us. Oh, yes, allyship is about the money too, right? It's about the resources and shifting resources in such a way that other people were spreading the wealth. So thank you for that.
Could I make a comment on that?
Sure.
I think a lot of times it's like very donation based, right? Is when people think money, but that doesn't have to be a donation. It could be, buying from a store or, from a company that is Black owned or brown owned or, owned by a BIPOC community, or, providing access to contracts, access to other people, other decision makers, providing, employment, right? Like there's a lot of different ways that resources are shared and not just a donation. And I think that piece about access is super important when you talk about uplifting communities, and you talk about really kind of being an ally and supporting folks, right? So
Absolutely.
It's not just what can you give as a donation, it's how can you truly support a community and allow them to provide the space for them to be, have access to different resources.
Absolutely. Do business, right? Do business together, donate, hire, all of those things. Absolutely. Refer. It absolutely makes a difference. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for adding that in the chat, KB, and thank you, Jonathan, for giving voice to that. All right, so now we're going to go into our second breakout. And Lakeisha, if you can take us there. She almost got it in. I mean, we needed about 30 more seconds.
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry.
So did we.
It was a real conversation. I know. That yanking from, I know, you never get used to it. Never get used to it. Well, let's continue the conversation together here for a few more minutes, and then we will end our discussion, our formal discussion for the night. Those of you who don't know, like, there's an after hours where we like kind of stay on and party a little bit after the session. So we'll hang out for a little bit with you afterwards as well. But would love to hear from the folks that have joined us about some of the conversations that you just had about being an ally and what you've learned tonight. So anyone want to share with us? And I think that Ra was asking for stories, some storytelling, some best good stories, and maybe some, you know, tell us all your mistakes, you know, that you made related to that. But does anyone want to share what you just talked about in your breakout?
I can share a bad story.
Go for it, Shane.
So one of the things we were talking about is kind of the branding that people do as ally, right? So we just finished Pride Month, right? And there's all the things. So I walked out on my porch at the same time that Amazon, yes, I use them and I know I shouldn't, right, was coming to deliver something. So the driver and I did the 6-foot reach. I took my package. He said, and no ally should ever start anything with this sentence, I hope this doesn't offend you, but, and you know what's coming is bad, right? He let me know it wasn't too late for me to find Christ, that I seemed like a very nice person. He was concerned about me and I could still find my way to heaven. And he probably proselytized with me for 5 minutes on my porch of my house, right? So I then wrote Amazon all the things. And they're like, but we celebrate Pride and we love the gays, right? And it's like, well, like, obviously you don't if you're not training your people to not worry about our salvation on our porches. So I think it's that thing, right? If we're gonna say we are a thing, if we're gonna say we are an ally, whether as an individual or as a corporation, right? Like, we have to deeply, you know, kind of do the work. So that's so never start a conversation with, I hope this doesn't offend you. And right, like, if you say you are a thing, then be it. And reparations would have been nice, and Amazon did nothing but apologize. So
interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Shane. Yeah. I hope this doesn't offend you, but, and then you know what's going to happen next, right? You just brace yourself for that.
Right, like, I probably shouldn't say this, then don't.
Yeah.
Right, like, there are a bunch of like starters that if you hear it in your head, you just need to shut it down.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Anyone else? I know we're all shaking our heads, but it's KB just put in the chat, why be racist, homophobic, etc., when you could just be quiet? It's a great question. That's like a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt. Any other conversations or questions that are bubbling up for you all, or comments? This is for the panelists as well as our guests this evening. This is a rich topic. And I think for me, it has given me, you know, when KB and Jonathan and Emlyn in this role that I play in the Austin community, it's incredibly stressful to like get it all right, you know? And so, you know, what I deeply appreciate is the idea that there's always learning, right? And that there are always going to be people who call me in. Hopefully they don't call me out, right? But they call me into this work to be able to collaborate with them around my learning, because each one of us at different points in our life and careers and the work that we do are in different spaces. And we never know when we need to exercise that muscle, of allyship. Great question from Rasha Shakir. How do you know when someone is not an ally? How do you know when someone is not an ally? And I'll just open that up to the group. Jonathan, I saw you come off mute the fastest. Go for it.
I was just going to say, they start the conversation with, I hope this doesn't offend you. And that, that pretty much lets you know right away. But no, I think, in our group, we started talking about kind of the branding, the fake branding. And I think the folks who were all, show, or, I think I've continued to have that gold star kind of image in my mind that that KB shared, where it's like the folks who are doing it for that gold star, they're signaling, right? They're wanting that recognition for being an ally. And I don't think that's the genuine way to approach the work, or to approach the space, or to approach a community. And so I think that, to me, is always a big red flag, is when I see people who are really only after, or only care about a topic, or only want to engage in something because it's good for the resume, or it's good for the company, or it's good for the, my future prospects, or whatever it is. And obviously there are lots of other clear ways that people say that they're not allies, but to me, those are the folks that are almost the most dangerous, because they're in the spaces, they're in, sometimes leadership roles, right? Because it's, they're willing to do that for the recognition. So it's, whenever I see someone who's signaling too hard, or who's really only looking after that, or in other private conversations, they have completely different ideologies. That's how I know that they're not an ally.
Thank you for that. Well, time flies when you're having fun. And I just looked at the time, I was like, oh my goodness. We are at the end of our time for this evening. I sincerely want to thank Emlyn, your brilliance, your genius, your insight, your courage, and your willingness to serve at the level that you're serving our community is just amazing to watch and to see. And if there's anything that we at Adisa Communications can do to be a part of that work, just let us know. You have an ally in our organization, as well as in our team. And thank you so much for being who you are and doing the work that you're doing. And thank you tonight for joining us and sharing your insights with us in our discussion this evening. And to you, to they, KB, thank you so much for just being a poet. Everything that they said, I could hear the rhythm and the soul and the spirit in what they were sharing with us. And so I just want to thank they for that. No, you? Is it you? It's you. Okay. Okay.
When you would use you use you, right? Like you use pronouns when you would normally use them, and you use you when you would normally use that.
Okay, got it. All right. I'm learning. I'm gonna get this down. Thank you for that, Shane. And I so appreciate your support of this community and the work that needs to be done in this community, and for always showing up. So thank you so much for being here and for sharing with us. And to you, Jonathan, Barona, it's so nice to finally meet you in person. And thank you for all the work that you do to uplift our community, to ensure that there are resources that are available, and that we expand the conversation around philanthropy and funding for our community. And I'm grateful to each one of you for participating in the Playbook for Black Activism, and for joining us in tonight's panel discussion. Thank you to our audience for joining. For those of you who are listening later, we'll make sure that there are notes to accompany the video presentation, but we really do appreciate you. And we do this every other month. And so we will see you in September at our next Adisa Communications After Hours. Thank you, everyone, and good night.